Good evening. Welcome to the Upset Podcast. This evening, we're talking about the dilemma of troubled pregnancies, condemnation or compassion. Coming up next. Hey, not sure why that happened, but once again, welcome back to the Upset Podcast. We're so happy that you tuned in on this Sunday evening, football Sunday, at that. But we are here, and when I say we,
Woo!
just
Tosh!
two of us. What
I guess
happened,
it's
right?
because of football
It's,
season.
it's football season, okay? It's football season.
We live in Eagles territory, so we
Yeah,
can
there's a lot
forget.
going on.
Yeah,
Even
we
though
can.
some of us are not Eagles fans, but between travel and ministry stuff going on over the weekend, this is one of those weekends where we are few in number. But I always feel like we're really not that few in number because we have our live audience with us. That's right, Rhonda. The Emmys are tonight.
Oh, the Emmys.
Yeah, it comes on. I think the red carpet is at 7, and then the actual Emmys start at 8. And I saw it pop up on my TV today, and I was, it's been a while since I have watched the Emmys. It's really been a while since I've watched any award show. I don't know, they're just not as appealing to me as they used to be. I just kind of pay attention to the cliff notes. Hello, Miss Rosalie Van Button. You're still in our thoughts and prayers.
I'm listening to Tally talking about he's sorry to put the two of us in this position. Sure you are.
And hello.
Same one in the background. Sure you are. Hey, Miss Ebad.
Hi, right back at you. Thanks for tuning in. Yes, ladies' night. Not officially,
I'm telling
but
you.
not officially, but yeah, we are here. We are here. As we said, our Eagles are playing. I'm saying our. I'm not. I live here, so I have to feel like I have to say that. So our Eagles are playing tonight. Go Eagles! For those who are watching the game, I think I saw that it was like tied at this point. So hopefully they'll pull out a win. But yeah, so this week I feel like hi there. Thank you. We both wore red too. We understood the assignment.
Not even planned. It was just
I know.
brilliance of the minds.
Yeah, I was like, it feels like a red night. But no, yeah, a lot has been kind of going on. Well, first of all, let me ask you, since we can be personal, how was your week?
Oh my goodness. Well, it was extremely busy as usual, but the for 5 days I was at the Women's Leadership Conference that's given through the NAD in Denver, Colorado, which was extremely nice. I hadn't been to Denver before, and the training was just phenomenal, for women leaders. And then for the first 2 days and the last 2 days were for women conference leaders, those who work in hospital systems and education. And that was really good too. So it made 5 days for me, but really good, Tosh. And then we got to go to Colorado Springs. You had to do a little sightseeing there. And they've got a great park that's called the Garden of Gods or something. You talking about beautiful.
I mean, I saw that.
Yeah, the mountains and all.
Yes, I went there. Yes.
But it was so funny because our tour guide was giving us all this message, how all of this was underwater, and then when the water resolved, you had all this beauty. So I was like, you don't even know he's talking about the Great Flood, right? All of us pastors and other leaders up there.
Yeah, we're like, oh,
but this is something phenomenal that one of the ladies said. She says, look at the beauty that came out of sin, right? Because the great flood and then the beauty that comes from sin. And she says, we can't even imagine the beauty that's going to come out of righteousness, right? Which is in heaven. I said, "Girl,
Yeah,
you a
that was
preacher?
deep.
My goodness, wasn't that deep?" I said, "Girl, you are a preacher."
Yeah,
That was
yes, I love that,
you
and it
be
is
out of
beautiful.
sin. That was great.
Yes. Hello, Ali. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, as soon as you said Garden of the Gods, I was like, yes, I've been there. It is very amazing and exciting to behold. Did you
Yeah.
guys ride isn't there like something that you can ride from one side to the other? Maybe, okay, maybe not. That
I
maybe
No, I didn't see that. You either took you could walk it, or
uh-huh.
you did a trolley, or we were in these Jeeps, like big Jeeps that
Oh,
could take
okay.
like 9, 10 people at
Gotcha.
a time. And then, because we could have gone through on our own, says, "Oh, how pretty! Look at that! Oh, yeah, that's nice, right?" But when you were with a tour guide, right, he was able to explain, what it means, and then somehow they're able to see pictures, in the stone. So it
Oh,
was
yeah.
very, very wonder. I mean, it was like a great wonder. You
Oh,
talk the
yes.
great wonders of the world, right? But that's a great wonder there. It's beautiful.
Okay, I'm glad you had a great time, and I'm glad you're back with us. We
Hopefully.
missed you last week, and well, we know what's been happening in the news. I'm almost before we started, I was like, I'm almost like emotionally drained from
Yeah, yeah.
the headlines and the
And
story.
though it was sad, that young man being murdered like that. I mean, I just wish that we as a people, that, when we disagree with politics, it doesn't have to lead to murder. But, it just reminds us, well, in the 60s, I was a little baby. You weren't even thought of. But back then, too, it was all of that violence, because what blacks wanted to vote, right? So everybody was, being murdered. Medgar Evers, and then you look at President, Kennedy and his brother,
Mhm.
and Martin Luther and Malcolm X. I mean, it was just horrendous times, and we are there again.
Yeah, that's the humbling part about it. It's like there's this disbelief that this is actually happening because there's so many people who say things that we disagree with, and they
Disagree
have
with.
platforms, and it's like
Yeah.
if this is a course of action that we're going to start taking, it's really being very sad times. And I mean, it was just we know what the conversation has been
Mhm.
in terms of people being offended, of him being referred to as a martyr and people kind of, applauding him as this great hero when we know some of the things that he's said, particularly about our community and other very
They
divisive.
believed him anyway, they believed and supported what he said. But one thing that her commentator said, it wasn't just the matter of assassinating him, because they could have done it while he was going in his house, or, getting out of his car, ran
Mhm.
down the
Yeah.
street. But they waited until he was in a public place
Mhm.
and to shoot the man in front of people. Can you imagine having that in your
Yeah,
mind?
I thought about that. I was like, I would have been
See him,
traumatized.
right? Now, I didn't see, because I don't do social media like that, but they were talking about social media was showing the actual
Oh
murder.
yeah, several people were recording. I mean, he was on
Yeah,
a
yeah.
using Utah on
Showing it,
campus.
and look, and it was talking about how, murder now is so desensitized, right? Because we see it all the time. Like, you just like, wow, right?
Yeah, I have to say,
Make
my
people.
daughter, she was familiar with him even more so than I was because she watches this show called Jubilee. It's like where people debate different topics, and so
Mhm.
she sent me the clip, and I said, "Oh." When I first saw it, I was like, "This is probably like AI or something." Like, I don't really
One
believe
day,
in it because it's because what we can do now to simulate these things, and but then shortly after I saw it announced on the news and it became very real and just people continuing to circulate the clip different angles, it was just kind of
right.
unsettling, but I think it definitely struck a chord with so many, not just um, in America, not just Christians, not just Adventist Christians, not just blacks, not just Republicans, not just Democrats, just it just struck so many nerves and
Yeah,
hit
yeah.
so many areas. And I'm sure we'll probably dive a little deeper in that on a future show because there's so many layers of that to unpack. But I know
And I
folks.
think it really, because even after that, the other politicians got so many more death threats, right? So it
Right.
really brought to mind, like, maybe I really am in danger, right?
Right. Yeah.
When people will just kill you because they disagree with you. But I can say they talk about all the rhetoric, and all things have been said is causing all these division. But we know there are several people who really start the rhetoric, and it comes from high places, right?
Oh, of
And
course.
so you're saying stop,
Same
but
here.
you're one of the main ones who doing it, right?
You're
You're doing it right
inciting
now.
it. You're encouraging it in some way. So
Yes, yes. And
yeah,
so
it's really sad times. We really have to stay prayed up because this world. I mean, you say we shouldn't be surprised, but yet you still can pray for safety, can pray for wisdom. As we go about
mhm.
doing various things. But yeah, that was definitely a hot topic this week. And like I said,
Wasn't there another school shooting or something?
and that was another sad part about it is so many people were talking about this that kind of got
Yeah, I
pushed
didn't
to
even I
like
didn't even
secondary.
see it. Yeah, I just heard
And
they
I was
said
like, oh, there
amongst all that
was.
was another school shooting. Did people die?
I believe so. Help me out.
I don't even know
Help
where it
me
was.
out. Our audience usually can help me. I did not get the numbers on that, but I do believe, if not deadly, some people were definitely injured, which is
Mm,
another trend that I'm hating to
yeah.
continue to see with these school shootings. I just don't know how we can tackle that a little bit better
Yeah.
so that it's not
But,
so appealing.
it was interesting in Charles Kirk's speech because he was just saying, you see all these school shooting. He's talking about the school shooting and he's assassinated right then. I'm
Right.
thinking, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
it was eerie. I mean, just
It was. I
creepy.
mean, you see all of these theories, about the guy that was standing behind him and he's making some weird gesture. And then I saw something that talked about the ring on his finger moved. And I'm like, guys, are we doing too much with this over analyzing of this?
Uh,
It's like it's getting kind of crazy how much we take one incident and kind of
mm-hmm,
create all of these narratives behind it. But definitely unsettling, definitely an eye opener for
mm-hmm.
a lot of people about where we are right now, where some of our friends, neighbors, um, you know, we have to be careful what we say and what we support and how we support because definitely
And
sends a message.
what it also not opened my eyes as a pastor, but it reinforces the responsibility of the church to teach love.
Right,
Responsibility, not punishment
right,
with judgment and condemnation,
yeah,
but to let people know, because people are hurting, that
oh
there's
yeah,
a God who loves them,
right,
right?
absolutely,
And however we want to show that through relationships or kindness, kind acts, kind words, kind gestures, people are so surprised, when somebody does something nice, or you look, oh, that was so
yeah,
nice. Why can't we make that a common thing, right?
right, right.
People
It's
will
um,
experience kindness, at all times. And if we could help people to see that God loves them, it can help somebody,
yeah,
because
absolutely.
people are hurt. They don't always share. Right now,
Hmm.
they're sharing with actions, that are not good. Because like the young man, they're saying he was always a great guy, come from a good family. No one ever saw anything. Look
Yeah,
around.
yeah, and people, Rhonda put up or shared that several of the HBCUs were
Yes,
threatened,
yeah, I did
as
hear
though
that.
we had anything to do with it, and come to find out this was someone whose beliefs kind of aligned from
Yeah,
paper with
same political stance, right?
exactly. So it was just interesting to me how we went there to the HBCUs right away as a like what do we have like
What we
leave
got to
us
do?
out of this like
That's
like,
what I'm
how did
saying. They
why did we
started
do
it.
this?
They
Yeah, I mean,
it's
campuses
what
were,
they say.
yeah, and these are very dangerous narratives that are put out there, and
Mhm,
people don't understand how harmful. When it doesn't apply to you, you don't get how just saying things flippantly or making these comments as it relates to certain groups of people can be very damaging,
mhm, mhm.
especially to very impressionable people. Yvette was saying that in Virginia, they have told them as educators that their teachers' licenses will be taken away if they are on social media speaking against him and in favor of his murder. I saw that some individuals were let go
Wow.
because they spoke, um, and it's like it's interesting to me how this particular person,
Person, yeah,
all
yeah,
of the people that
yeah,
have,
yeah.
but
What about the couple, the Democratic couple that was just
exactly.
murdered a few months
It's
ago?
like a
Said nothing
social
about that.
covering. Like, don't you dare talk about our
Yeah,
star child here. And that's the thing. I think there has to be a separation between understanding that what happened to him should never happen. I think
absolutely.
anybody with some ounce of humanity or true Christianity would never want harm to come to one
Mhm,
of God's children simply because you disagree with them.
mhm.
But yeah, at the same time, we also have to understand that people have a reason to feel a way about celebrating someone who has done everything in their power to hurt them and speak against their people, and so I don't understand why those things can't be understood and respected. I mean,
Right.
it wasn't said about you. It wasn't, and for
Mhm.
you to say, such lofty things, it is a cosign, in my opinion, that if you say someone who said Martin Luther King Jr. wasn't a good guy, or who said, you indicate that black women or black people don't have enough intelligence, or that you would question whether someone is definitely qualified for the job simply because they're black. When you put those narratives out there,
Mhm.
it makes sense that we would feel away about
Right.
someone saying this is our hero. So I think there's just a lot. It creates room for a little bit more understanding and discussion and sensitivity. But like I said, we'll probably dive a little deeper on that with the whole topic, because we already
Mhm.
had our topic planned for this week, and I feel like we have been inundated with thoughts about this over the weekend. Maybe we need a little time for it to digest and maybe
Yeah.
revisit it. But thank
I'm like, I don't know if anybody else out there heard that, you can verify that his parents were Seventh-day Adventists. I was told that,
this is
um,
a shooter's parent.
the shooter's parents are.
I did not see to hear too much about him. I did know that there was a big in our Adventist community, this big thing that he was a Sabbath keeper, as though, because someone was a
Oh, he was a
Sabbath
Sabbath,
keeper.
so I guess that's true,
Then,
that his
then
parents were
this
at
is this was Charlie Kirk, though, that he talked about
that
keeping
he
the
was
Sabbath,
Mormon?
and
Someone says I heard he was Mormon. Well,
so the family of the shooter, and even that was a thing, like, oh, he kept the Sabbath, all right, all's right with, like, we take
gets
little pieces, and because someone does this, that means that
right.
we need to rally behind them. So it's, yeah, like I said, it
Wait a
basically
minute, around the shooter or the
Charlie
one who was
Charlie Kirk.
assassinated? Oh, Charlie Kirk was a Sabbath keeper.
Yes,
No,
he talked about keeping the Sabbath. Yeah.
was it him? I thought the shooter was. Maybe that's
No,
why
that was
Rhonda
him,
said
because
it
they had
was.
videos of him talking about why he keeps the
The
Sabbath.
shooter was Mormon and Kirk was Seventh-day. There we go. Okay, okay. Thank you
Yeah.
for
So
clarity,
yeah,
Yvette. Ah, oh
yeah.
my goodness. Yeah, okay.
Because Utah, that's big Mormon community there in Utah.
Mhm.
But yeah, we keep saying we're going to talk about this later, but then oh, thank you for telling us about that, because like I said, remember we were talking about there was also a
Yeah.
school
Oh, at
shooting.
a Catholic school. Wow.
So it was two children that died. 14 were injured in Minneapolis while all of this was kind of going on, and kind of got buried. Um, okay. So, okay. And Dr. Daniels was saying he was a Sabbath keeper, but not at Fayetteville. I guess someone was trying to get membership.
Wasn't that okay.
We
He said he
nothing
wasn't
like to claim folks, don't we? Yes.
at he kept Sabbath someplace else. Lord
What I'm realizing, there are a lot of Sabbath keepers who are not professed Seventh Day Adventist.
oh, yeah.
I'm seeing a lot of that. So
There are a
that's
lot of churches. As a matter of fact, I went down a roll call yesterday in my sermon. I was preaching about Sabbath, and I brought out the number of Sabbath keeping churches that exist today, and it's a lot of them.
yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
So
And we just happen to be the largest, but there's a whole bunch of others.
right, yeah. So it's interesting how we attach ourselves. Yeah, That said, it was just so scary. My school goes on lockdown all the time. We went on lockdown the first week of school.
Wow.
I still feel like, oh, okay. He said that was an autofill. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Daniels, for clarifying. Thank you. So last week, we had the opportunity to hear from one of our newest doctors, Dr. Keenan Tyler, about his research, bringing the church out of white supremacy was the type. If you didn't get a chance to watch it last week, go back and take a look at that. But we also have another doctor in the house,
All
Dr.
praises to
Marleena,
the Lord. Mhm.
celebrating all of our doctors. And so we also wanted to hear a little bit about her research, and that's why I'm glad that this has been archived because the rest of the team needs to hear this deep dive as well. But it's definitely a topic. And before you share with us, I want you to tell me why you chose this. I mean,
Was a part of my yeah, it's a part of my research
yeah.
story. So I can share all of that when you're ready to let me.
Okay, all right. So let's and we invite you guys to also be a part. You know, you're the rest of the Upsider cast tonight. We need you guys to chime in with questions and commentary because we want to hear what you have to say. But first, Dr. Debrough is going to give us a little overview of her research so we can dive into it a little bit more.
All right. Thank you, everyone. And we had decided this some time ago that we will all share our studies that were performed because it's about ministry. You know, we all have doctors in ministries. And this is a research that God had given me long before I even thought I was going back to school. He actually pushed me to do this. And just a little testimony, a friend of mine called and said, "Do this degree with me." And I thought, I don't know if I was ready to go back to school. My mom had just passed away, and I was mourning. And she says, "Well, he's on church leadership and community witnessing." And I love community witnessing. I believe in being in the streets like Jesus was, right? And
Mhm.
so she says, "Contact the school." I contacted the school, and the gentleman said, "Yes, yes." You know, because the issue is my seminary degree is a master's in pastoral ministry, and most schools want you to have master's of divinity or the equivalency. Now, I have another master's in physical therapy, so I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but he says apply anyway. So it was in March. I was Oh, he contacted me to see if I could apply early. And I told my friends, so we did all this hard work, getting all our paperwork in to
Mhm.
do it. And because at first I said, I changed my mind again. And then I had to do another mother funeral. It was in 2021, right? So it was a lot of COVID deaths. I was doing, I was just tired of funerals and I couldn't do my friend's funeral emotionally, but of
Right.
course, I agreed because they were like family to me. And I did her mom's funeral. While I was there, her cousin was on the platform with me, and she had her doctorate. And she says, she says, some doors are only going to open because of this. I want you to go on, and do it. She was really recommending. But I'm like, I don't need any more doors. I got enough doors, right? I'm thinking to myself, right? And so, God just kept pushing me in this. And so, in after I applied to the school, it was 3 weeks later. I was kind of having a bad day. I had to do another funeral the very next day, and I was crying to God. I says, "God, you brought me here to PA. I'm all by myself," because my son was at Pine Forge and he couldn't leave, because of the restrictions and things
Yeah.
like that with the COVID thing. And so I was just so alone, mourning. And I was like, "God, I don't know why." And I said, "Lord, I just do whatever you tell me to do, right? I do
Mhm.
whatever." The very next day, I got the call that I was accepted into this program.
Wow.
God has said, "I want you to do that study." And here we are. So I don't know if
Mhm.
you remember when we had Dr. Kesselin on, and she
Yeah.
was saying how many people start the program with a study already in mind. And so I will begin because I want to share with you what God gave me to do as a pastor in our church to help women with troubled pregnancies.
Mm.
I met several women over the years as a pastor. And some of being a female pastor, we get a lot of women who like to come and share with us things that they might not normally share with a man. And all of them share with me how they had had abortions years ago and it was still haunting them.
Mm.
And they would say, Pastor, you just don't understand my frame of mind and where I was at that time, right? And so they had the abortion, but then years, even decades later, is haunting them what
Wow.
they did. And so I thought, well, what if we could help the women when, while they're pregnant? Like, what if we could offer them emotional support and maybe financial support? Would that alter, that decision? Because
Mm.
there's so much going through the mind of a woman emotionally.
Mm.
And so God gave me a ministry, and it has evolved into something quite beautiful that you will understand here as I continue to go through. I just want to share that God gave me this study. Let me make sure here. Hold on. Oh, okay, here I am. I'm going to make sure.
Mm.
God gave me this study. Um, and of course, whenever you're doing a study, you have to ask questions.
Okay.
So my question was, in the absence of medical risk to the mother and the child, and in the absence of violence, how can a faith-based support group address troubled pregnancies for women 13 to 45 years in the state of Pennsylvania? You have to narrow your
Mm.
research when you do it. Second question is, can guilt, shame, and the lack of emotional and financial support be the catalyst of an abortion? Remember, I was talking to three women who were church, oriented and had a faith base. And then, are there any best practices available today that aid in treating troubled pregnancies? This study that I did will attempt to identify the influences and results of an abortion to validify the need of a woman's support group addressing their emotional and financial concerns.
Mm.
All right.
Got it.
So with every study, the first thing you do is establish the problem. All
Mm.
right. The problem that we have is, um, why do women feel they have to have an abortion, right? We know as women in church, or women and men in church, we often feel that, that's a wrong thing to do. But what is the state of the mind of women? So in my study, we looked at the statistics, right?
Mm-hmm.
We looked at statistical data for the state of Virginia. I'm sorry, Pennsylvania. I used to be in Virginia, it was in my mind, but Pennsylvania. And for the year 2023, the stats showed that 35,412 women had abortions before 23 weeks of gestation
Mm.
in Pennsylvania. Of that, I looked at the women in Montgomery County, which is where my context is, my church, also Bucks County and Philadelphia, because I have members that come from each of them.
Mm.
And it showed, the statistics revealed, the number of abortions, the race, how many had them according to the races I can share with you. Whites were the largest category at 15,800, African
Mm.
American at 15,400, and then Hispanics at 4.5 thousand, and there were other categories of people that were less, right? Studies also showed their financial status, because it's believed that women will seek abortions when they are having financial difficulties. So it gave me statistics of demographic information,
Mm.
the ages of women, where they live, the income, that they made, right? Because that also increases their, what I want to say, desire, or not desire, because in studies it shows no woman gets pregnant and desires to murder their child. No one does that. So it kind of increases the how do I want to say this, the threat of pregnancies. Believe it or not, there are married women who have abortion. Unmarried are much more. Out of that category was
Right.
31,000. Married women, it was 4,100 plus, and then a number unknown. what I do want to share with you is that the most popular age is 25 to 29. And
Hmm.
some of the ages went all the way down to like maybe 12, right?
Wow.
12, and then they go up. I stopped at 45, but there's some people who, after 45, the numbers get very, very slim
Right.
anyway because of that women getting pregnant. But you see that this crisis occurs in so many places. Another thing we want to talk about was the problem, the need for abortion, and the controversy behind abortions. We know that you have the two political groups, your pro choice and your pro lifers, right? And they all feel that how their thoughts of pregnancy is what's really important. But I'm going to share some important information with you as to why pro-choice people feel the way they feel.
Hmm.
Here it says abortion has become a personal issue and has become quite divisive. You have your pro-lifers who advocates, I'm sorry, pro-life advocates and pro-choice advocates. And sometimes because of the politics that is so involved, there is again this heightened anger, that's in society. That's why you will see people being assassinated, right, at abortion clinics, right? You
Hmm.
stand for life,
Figures.
go
Yeah.
kill someone else, right? And
Hmm.
so it's highly political. But the pro-choicers believe um, that it's their choice and their right to do with their bodies what they wish,
Right.
while pro-lifers feel that the life of the child has the utmost importance, and the abortion choice has minimal significance in comparison to life, right?
Hmm.
This was the question that pro-choicers struggle with. What is the validity of a fetus? So listen to what I found out in my study.
Hmm.
It said, though the belief of the pro-life advocates is that abortion produces murder, many women who abort do not normally have the mentality that they are committing murder. It is the state of mind of the troubled pregnancies that causes a stress level that is unimaginable to a regular person. As a matter of fact, many of the early church leaders in the Roman Catholic Church did not see abortion as a homicide. It was denied being a homicide due to the thought processes that a fetus did not have a soul until it was formed in the flesh. It wasn't until Pope Pius IX declared abortion a homicide and therefore grounds for excommunication in 1869. And abortion had been declared a criminal activity ever since within the Christian faith. Listen, according to Dr. Bowman Ward, who asked the question, is the fetus a person?
Hmm.
The Bible's view, he states both the Old Testament and the New Testament of the Bible are silent on the subject of abortion. I know we use, Jeremiah, chapter 1, it says, before I formed you, I knew you.
Yeah.
But there's no statement of that, right? So here it says that's the first thing, the religious um, differences in people's thoughts. The second thing are the differences within the medical community, the American Medical Association. There were changes within the medical association because initially they decided against abortion until changes occurred in 1959. The Medical Penal Code proposed that physicians be permitted to terminate a pregnancy if one of the following conditions met. The pregnancy threatened the life of the mother or would critically impair the mother's physical and or medical condition, or that the child would be born with grave physical medical defects. So, and the pregnancies result from rape or incest. So, if it was at harm to the mother or the child, if it was due to violence,
Hmm.
rape, or incest, then for the medical community, an abortion was allowed. The third thing, historically, is that because of when women are threatened by this pregnancy, they don't know what to do. Many of them were getting abortions from all of these other places, unsafe
Mhm.
places, and
Yeah.
there was such a safety risk to the mother that many of the women died,
Yeah.
right? And so that was the high controversy about abortions and the medical challenges, right? Then there's the criminalization, right? So some states were making it a
Mhm.
crime if the mother would abort their children. Not only would they put the mother in jail, but anyone who drove the mother to an abortion clinic, to the healthcare professionals at the clinic. And
Mhm.
so there were doctors who were told that you're going to serve time in prison.
Yeah.
Also, to some mothers, some states were requesting the death penalty for a woman who would have an abortion procedure. So we're going far, far, far to the opposite side here. So it was that threat of criminalization. What's going to happen to me and others, right? You see the face right here of Amber. Her name is Amber Thurman. Amber Thurman was a young woman who resided in Georgia. She was pregnant with twin babies. She had moved to her own place. She was in nursing school, and she felt that having children at that time was just not the best decision. So she had an abortion. She took the pill, right, for an abortion, but all of the fetal tissue did not come out of her body. So she got very sick. And I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you, in the state of Georgia, she could not do it. So she had to go to North Carolina to have that done. And so when she came back, the fetal tissue was still in her, and she was getting sick, had a very bad fever. She was very sick. She went to the hospital. Some of you may have seen this on
Mhm.
the news. She went to the hospital, and the doctors would not touch her. They didn't do anything to her because they felt that they were at risk, right, of going to prison. And so
Mhm.
they had to wait until she was in a very critical place before they could give her any assistance. This young woman was telling her mother that I feel like I'm dying. And her mom said, don't say that, right? And she
Mhm.
said, no, I feel like I'm dying. So she was giving her mom information on how to take care of her son that she'd already had. And to their dismay, when she got very critical, they tried to rush her into surgery, but it was too late. She died.
Mhm.
Candy Miller was a second woman, also in Georgia, who she was pregnant. She was married with children, and her and her husband had gotten pregnant again. But due to her medical health, I think she had a medical diagnosis. The doctor says, if you have another child, you may die,
Right.
right? So she didn't want to have the child, and to save her own life, right? So she took the pill, and still the fetal tissue was left within her, and she was very sick for like 3 days, and she didn't want to go to the hospital because she knew that she wouldn't be treated. And then finally she went, and it was too late. She died. Two women in the state of Georgia. So a judge reversed this because they had a law. I just want to tell you about this. These two women, these Georgian incidents occurred in August and November 2022, respectively, and it drew lots of controversy, stating these two mothers expired because of the severity of the abortion ban and laws. From these incidents, a Georgia state judge reversed the 6-week abortion ban as 10 doctors reported that both women's medical conditions were preventable of death. If
Mhm.
only the doctors would have taken them in and removed the dangerous fetal tissue, these women wouldn't have died. But because of the abortion bans, the doctors were afraid that, they would go to prison. So
Wow.
you see the controversy that is going on here. And then another problem was that the psychological changes of a woman um, with guilt and shame, right?
Mhm.
So studies showed that most people, when they're having an abortion, because of the severity, of their issues and the emotional trauma that they have. And you may know somebody, audience, who've gone through this. I know abortions are very high at our religious institutions, right?
Yeah.
Because
Mhm.
young ladies are away from home, then you have date rape, you got all these kind of things that happen, and abortions are very prominent, right? And so women, because of their emotional state, right, they have abortions. And so there's not the large number of guilt and shame that occur as we thought that it did, right?
Mm.
Studies showed that it occurred mostly with women who had moral obligations, right? You had moral stances, right? But to the majority of women, so if you look at 35,000 women, only 5% of them would have guilt and shame thereafter, right? And
Okay.
so that, yeah, that that was very amazing to me because I thought that the number would be large, but we see that that's not a real
Well,
issue.
let me ask you a question, just because that's interesting to me that you said the moral dilemma. Maybe they didn't want, they were part of a religious circle. They didn't want the shame of carrying a pregnancy, but yet they were okay because some consider, abortion a moral issue. If you choose to terminate a
Mhm.
pregnancy, you're doing something wrong. But that was not more so the fear, not necessarily fear of God or judgment, but fear of people and their judgment.
So it's so interesting that you said that because the women, they did fear God, but the trauma of what they are going through at that time. I've never been pregnant, and certainly not out of wedlock, right? So when you have that fear,
Mhm.
especially in the church community,
Right.
you have the fear of your parents, your fear of your community, fear of your church. And we know we're very strong, right? What do we,
Yeah.
you're getting put out, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no thought. I'm a pass. You're getting put out, right, by many, right? And so all of this trauma, and then how am I going to do it? I can't afford it. All of these issues are in your mind. You don't know what to do. And so there is the fear, you have that faith in God, that belief in God. Let me say that belief in God, but the fear overcomes them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Studies even showed that with some women, Tosh, that they were so traumatized that they would have an abortion because of the mental state. Is like there's a blockage of what they're doing. Then later they will grieve the loss of the child that they had aborted. That's
Mm-hmm.
because, after all the fear kind of resides, they would have fear in what they did,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so it's just a very, very sticky situation. So that's why the question is, should there be condemnation or should there be compassion? So, what my degree requested, because it's church leadership and community witnessing, right? We had to formulate a program, a ministry, if you will, that could confront these situations, right? This being trouble pregnancies. And so I formulated a program called Her Name is Grace, right? Because God gives us grace, right? Grace. And I share with people that I have met, and they are troubled because of what they did years ago. And I let them know that God is a forgiving God, right? So my program was to state, what if we provided them with emotional support? Have a program that gave them on site pastoral care, professional counseling if they needed that as well. We formed a big sister program where we would connect with the mother and be there with her if she needed rides to the doctor, take her back and forth to the doctor. And I forgot to say, this is pre and post
Mm.
abortions, right? So for this program, if this was right? If we could offer this to a mother, maybe she wouldn't have an abortion, right? So we gave her that emotional support with pastoral care through me and others, and then professional counseling through somebody else in case a professional, in case, their issues were really, really deep. We would formulate a big sister program where we could take them back and forth to the doctors, because we're talking about young girls too, right?
Mhm.
If we could take them back and forth to their doctor's appointments, right? Celebrate things that are important to them, their birthdays and their children, so you build a relationship with them. And then we would have a financial support system where we would give them monthly vouchers for baby items, like maybe $200 a month for the first 1 to 2 years until the mother could get on their feet, and then offer employment assistance through the ability to write good resume writing, and interviewing skills, right? And so we would also, post abortion, if anyone came in after an abortion, we will offer them pastoral care and professional counseling if they were of the 5%. And this ministry, Tasha, addresses the 5% of women who do have regrets, who do struggle emotionally. And I mean, it's to the point where they suppress a lot, but that burden follows them throughout the
Right.
ages, right?
Yeah.
And so this was our ministry. It would be on site, and we would follow the women. It wouldn't be a ministry that you would just go to for a few years and then it's over. We would follow them throughout. So my leadership team and ministry team in this program would include counselors who did pastoral care, professional mental health counselors. Of course, we would have ad- admin staff, right, to handle scheduling and getting vouchers, and things like that, because we could connect with what I want to say, outside agencies and merchants who are always giving out free gifts and things like that. We'd also have someone doing grant writing, so that we could have grants and stuff to do that, as well as people who would participate in the Big Sister program, where you will align one person to a mother, right? That they would befriend that person and establish a relationship with them. And there were several others, counselors and things like that, that we had that
May,
would be on our
may I
staff.
ask you may I ask you something about this ministry? Because I think it's great, and I like how you said that it's pre and post. So it's
Mhm.
pre, hey, not knowing whether the person may choose to go with it through it or not, but
That's
either
right.
way, the ministry is there. So, what's the measurement for success with this program from your perspective?
So the measurement of success is that they would not abort their child.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
That's
That's
the hope. So this program is without condemnation or judgment. If they decided to abort their child and afterwards they still want counseling, we would provide that for them, because the emotions that happen, and they share, statistics would share that immediately they may not have emotional issues,
right.
but they would come sometime later. And the women that I was confronted with in the very beginning, it was decades post, right? The issue. Initially, right after, the stress is gone because people won't know, church people won't know, your
Mhm.
community won't know. You feel that relief, phew, right? You can breathe. But then after, it comes a lot of
It hits.
trauma. So for the sake of time, this
Yeah, okay.
this I mean, this is a really, really excellent study. And praise God, I had honorable mention at my graduation for
Oh,
it.
yeah.
Very good study. So I'm going to go very quickly.
Okay, good.
The best practices that are out there, one is religious community for reproductive choice. It is a pro-choice company. I love this. They offered training to those in the community who would also like to have a program. They none of them would provide you with monies to have an abortion, but you could come, right, and they would um try to help you emotionally. They would do ultrasounds and things like that to share, that you were pregnant, and things like that, and try to help the mother, right? To bring a point of solace to the mother. Very good program. It was all faith based. All of these are faith based. Some are pro life and some are pro choice. What I liked about this one, it gave you a lot of spiritual strength through resources, through literature, through prayer. You could call, they would pray with you. They used to do more on site, but then they lost governmental funding. And so a lot of the things are online, right? And not face to face. Then there are Catholics for Choice. I was so surprised to find that group because,
Yeah.
Catholics are, pro lifers, but there are those who feel like it's our choice still, right? And that God gives freedom of choice. And so there were lots of services that they provided to women. And all of these are post, the reversal of Roe v. Wade, because
Mhm.
now, you no longer have your own right to choose, right? This is done for you. So these groups stand out very well. And then Stand Up Girl is actually a group for young teenage women. And that Stand Up Girl is mostly pro-life ministry. So they do a lot to kind of encourage you to have your baby, right? They want to make sure you have your child, and then they give you counseling and things like that so that you don't have the abortion. Then First Choice Women Resource Centers, that is a pro-choice, and so they help a lot with training. The woman, pregnant woman, and the spouse or the father, whomever, they give counseling to both. And then Solutions Health Pregnancy Center, that was another pro-choice company, ministry who did the same. And then Preborn, that's the last
Mhm.
one that I studied, and that was a strong pro-lifer. I mean, they really did a lot of encouragement to the women to not have an abortion. Almost they were proselytizing too, so
Right.
that they felt like, if you have an abortion, you lost, right? We want to save you.
Mhm.
And so they did that. And so what was the outcome? The outcome. Um, the number of abortions within the three counties of Philadelphia, Montgomery County, and Bucks County were 13.9 thousand. The 5% of that, right, would be 696. So roughly 700 women. This ministry has the ability to touch 700 women for this year. So let's say the next year, if there were more, right?
Right.
This ministry, whatever that 5% is able to reach hurting women out there. What did Jesus do? He came for those who were hurting, right? When you read Isaiah 61 and Luke chapter 4, Jesus came for the broken. So
Mhm.
if we could help women when they were at a place where they were most traumatized in their lives, it's easy to say, oh, you shouldn't be aborting your child anyway. You know that's wrong, right? It's
Mhm.
easy to throw condemnation on people. What if we can help them through their roughest times, understanding, right, the potential medical harm that could happen to them? They could die in the process, understanding the psychological problems that occur with women. What if we could help them in the process, not make the decision for them, but love up on them and care for them like Jesus did, and so much so that they don't choose to have an abortion? Then life is really life, right?
Right.
Life for the mother and life for the baby. I did so whenever we do a research, you look at the problem, right? You look at the plan, right? And then the partners to help you. There's an Adventist um grant funding program that's called VersaCare Foundation. And so I went through,
Mhm.
someone recommended, because they knew I do all this community outreach, right? So they recommended that I go through this training. I didn't have the time, I was in school work, but I pushed myself, right? Went through it. They absolutely loved my ministry, said they never heard of it like this before. They are willing to give me $50,000.
Whoa. All right now.
The max is 50,000. And they said, and until you, because they knew I was finishing my doctorate, they said, even if you don't apply, we will give you money, right? If you need it right now, right? So I said, God,
Wow.
look at that. I also had clergy support, other female pastors says, I love this. I will do this at my church. Come and teach me how, right? And then there
Mm.
are so many church supporters within my own congregation that said, I would love to be a part of this. I want to help. I want to be on the team. It is a phenomenal ministry. We haven't started it yet because we're in the process of buying our new building. And so, stuff is just in a disarray. But I want to share this with you because I know you're listening to me. I want to share this true story there's this couple. They were staunch conservative Christians, and they were struggling having a baby. And they're praying to God. They want to have this child, right? They're praying to God to have this child. See, I lost Tosh.
No, I'm
And
here.
oh, you're all
I
here.
just made you bigger since you were telling
Okay.
us.
All right. And so um they're praying to have this child, and they were staunch pro-lifers. So the husband would go speaking all kinds of places against abortion, and the wife, she would go to the abortion clinics, and she would pass out literature to people who were coming up, telling them, that's the wrong thing to do. To make this very long story short, this wife had a really good friend that's kind of a little bit on the wild side, but they were close friends. And her husband was going out of town, and he says, "What are you gonna do while I'm gone?" She says, "I'm just gonna be with my friend." And he was saying, "That girl is no good for you, right?" She says,
Right.
"My friend, but who else am I? She needs to stay out of trouble. I'm the best person to help her." So they go to this birthday party, and there is this guy who has been raping. He's a rapist, right? A serial rapist. And he would drug people while they were drinking, right? He put stuff in their
Mm.
drink. They would pass out. He would rape them, and then he would put them in the tub so that all the evidence would be washed away. And the women, the only thing they would remember is getting out of the tub, right? From where they were sitting, wherever they were, if they were in a party, a club, or sometimes it would just be people that he would meet and have conversation with. And
Wow.
so it happens to this woman, Tosh. And
Mm.
she feels that something is wrong in her mind. She feels something has happened to her, and she tells her friend, and her friend's like, "We've got to go. We got to tell your husband. We got to go to the police." But the shame and guilt, she didn't want to do that at first, and so she becomes distant with her husband. Just a touch of him, because she felt so violated,
Mhm.
by this guy, and so she finds out that she's pregnant.
Oh.
Did you hear what I said? She couldn't get pregnant with her husband. She's
Mm.
finally pregnant, and she's praying to God that it's from her husband and not the rapist. So now she has to tell her husband. Her husband, who is this godly man, right, is so angry with her. And he is just like, he says, "I told you not to hang with her," right? And
Mm.
look at what happens. So he leaves home. She's in distress. He comes back a day late, and then he um he's remorseful of his actions, right?
Right.
And so after all of this, he says, the only thing we can do is have an abortion. They were anti-abortionists, right?
Mhm. So here.
Christians, strong conservative Christians. So the wife says, "Well, wait a minute. How can you do that to God? And how can we do it when we've made this stance?" And he says, "How dare you throw that in my face?" Right? Yet to the
Wow.
community, all on television, they're seeing him as being a pro-lifer. You see how we are until things happen to us
Yep.
or our children, right?
Mhm.
Make a
Yeah.
long story short, he leaves her. He forces her to have an abortion. She goes to the clinic, but she can't do it. And
Wow.
so she tells him, "I can't do it. God gives the births, right? God
Mm.
gives this life." And so he leaves her. He says, "I will not be embarrassed from the community knowing that my wife had a child from a rapist." She says, "But what if it's your child?" Well, he
Mm.
leaves her. And then when she has a little baby, it's a beautiful little mixed baby because the rapist was black. It was
Wow.
a beautiful baby, and they do find the rapist and things like that. And the person she thought had done it was not the one. So why
Wow.
am I saying that? Why would God, who's the giver of life, not give her and her husband a child, but would give it to her and the rapist? What was Jesus saying?
Mm.
Is he saying that we need to learn compassion? And I'm not saying if anybody's raped, they need to have a child. I'm not talking anything about
Right.
that.
Right.
But Tasha, makes you wonder, why would
Mhm.
God not
Mhm.
honor them? They praying for years. But the first and only time she gets raped, she has this child. And she has her little daughter, and she loves her baby.
Right.
Right. And her child is an
Wow.
adult now. Very, very strong story. And why is this
Yeah.
important? It's important for us as Christians, guys, to have the love of Jesus Christ, right? That when we see people and they're broken, like the woman um, was caught in adultery. She was guilty, right? She was guilty. She was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, I can X out of this, Tosh. So,
No, okay, sorry.
yet, God had compassion on her. Do
Mm.
we have compassion with people in our families, in our communities, in our churches? What would church look like if one of
Right.
our women, came and said, "Oh, Pastor, I feel so bad. I had an abortion." And we loved them through the process, Tosh. What
Right.
if, right?
Mm.
And
Mm.
could you imagine them seeing the real love of Christ instead of condemnation? They would get love and let them know that God forgives you, right? And he loves you in spite of that. Mm. That's me.
Absolutely.
That's my
No, no,
ministry.
I
That's my
love this.
study, right? That's my study.
No,
What if, right? What if people could see Jesus in us? Would there be shame, guilt, right? Because it's very prominent in the Christian community.
no, I love. First of all, I'm sorry I'm delayed. It's my laptop. But I love the research. First of all, I'm glad that you were inspired to do it. Um, Secondly, it's challenging my thinking because a lot of the shame and guilt that people have who want to have abortion comes from public perception, whether it's from the
Mm,
church or family. So it almost makes me think, if we took that layer away from the beginning, then that would not be a reason why someone would choose that. Um, as opposed to, I don't know. I'm not saying we should. I'm just saying the way that we cause shame, not just for abortions, but anything that makes people make bad decisions just so they don't have to deal with what we put them through as
mhm.
Christians or as religious communities. How much harm are we actually causing by trying to do good? I guess is my question. Where if we started with the compassion, they may not have wanted that choice in the first place.
Mhm, mhm. And if people did not feel that they would be so condemned from
Right,
the family and community, as you were saying, maybe they would reach out more, right?
right,
Reach out. Now, what I did not share with you, that the top studies, because my study was, what would guilt and shame be the catalyst, right? Lack of finances and emotional support. Studies reveal that um, the top reasons were bad relationships with the father, right?
okay,
Or lack of finances, and what was that third thing? I have it written in my notes. Jesus, bring it back to me. I'm trying to do it from memory. Lack of finances, um, and poor timing. Like, it's a bad time. Like with the story with Thurman there, Amber Thurman. She had a son, right? But she was now pregnant with twins. It's not a good time, right?
right,
So she thought, let me just have this abortion, right? And so guilt and shame just weren't even on the list, right? Because
right,
most people who have abortions, they don't regret it. Only a small number, because of a moral teaching that we have. So, which would be, right, some religious beliefs and things like that, or people who just have moral clarity that makes them not, feel that, no, that's a wrong thing to do.
right. So Mike Williams had a question.
Yes, all right. Organizations that talk the women out of abortions, do they help place the child with another family if the woman doesn't want to keep the child? So, they did not offer any support that way, but um, what they wanted to do, I think they actually talked the women into keeping their own children, right? To totally alter their mind off of the abortion decision.
With
So,
support, with
yeah, right,
financial
right.
support.
Yeah, that just kind of gave them, and most of their support was mostly religious support. Like I said, they were proselytizing, trying to bring the women to a point of salvation,
Mm.
especially the preborn organizations. Hmm.
And I'm just curious for our listeners who are hearing about Grace, I'm calling it Grace Ministries for short.
Hmm.
If your church were to start chapter of this, do you think your congregation would be receptive to this type of ministry at your local church? I'm just curious.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
let me know.
That's a great question,
Are
Tosh.
we
Great.
ready for that? Because a lot of people feel like when we provide support, we're actually co-signing or condoning or encouraging. It's almost like you want people to feel helpless so that they don't make the choice. And it's like, is that the methodology we should be using or thinking about?
And Tosh, while you're asking people to put that in the chat, the study showed that a lot of men, a lot of husbands and boyfriends were very supportive of women having the abortions, right?
Mhm.
And like I said, a lot of people were married. You think that it's just for single women, but the trauma happens to married women. Sometimes the husbands force their women, to do that. So it's quite the controversial study. And what if where does healing occur? That's what I want to ask. Where does healing? I mean, there's always the threat of punishment, right? The threat of what people are going to say about me and think about me, right? And so that's the trauma that we can't understand because it's going through their heads emotionally, and it's hard to deal with. What if they knew, God forgives me, right? He loves me, and even though I'm making this mistake or whatever, God is going to help me through this process. Or let's say, or if that doesn't prevent them from doing it, if they did it right, and then once they come to themselves, because I remember I said studies show that there's something that happens to the minds of some of the women that the trauma and stress is so strong that they kind of, is an out of body experience, right? And then after the grief, they come to themselves, right? What if at that time with the trauma, they said, but I know that God loves me and my church is going to be there for me. I know there's somebody I can go to at my church and they're going to embrace me. What if? Say. So what
No,
can be said about the spouse or boyfriend who wants the child, but the woman wants to have the abortion? Is there counseling for the men in this situation? Yes, there is. Well, not with my ministry. I hadn't thought about that, but with some of the others. But yeah, if there a man that comes through and wants to be a part of my ministry, we have pastoral counseling and we have professional counseling. So yes, that we could definitely do that. And some of the other agencies were talking already to the spouses or the fathers of the children. There was a time when SDA Church was not anti-abortion. Now that we have changed our stance, what about the newfound guilt that women now are experiencing decades later? Yeah, and that's what this program is all about. Offering counseling, pastoral counseling, and professional counseling to women who are still broken from decisions made years later, right? So that they will know that God is there for them, right? He is a forgiving God, right? And we have lots of examples in the Bible of where God forgave. So, I don't know why we struggle as Christians, Tosh, doing the right
yeah,
thing. How
it's
you
sad.
you understand if I'm in a trauma. I'm telling you, guys, I'm a pastor. What if something happened, I got pregnant? Y'all would not see me ever again, right? If for some reason and I'm single, if I would have a moral fault, you would never hear me again. I could not imagine what people would say about me. I would disappear, I'm telling you. And so that's the trauma that people have, right? What if we would say, our church is a loving church. Even though I made a wrong, I want to get myself right with God, right? And I know that people would be forgiving of me, right? And I can get myself right with God. What if we were that type of church, Taj?
No, I know.
I think our congregations would be accepting. However, is there a way for the young lady to maintain her anonymity through the program? Absolutely. Absolutely. And because I mean, what most people they don't really want to share, right? And that's the whole purpose, to keep things private. If that's the case, some people, like if I would say, well, our program, our ministry, we would, help take them to the doctor and things like that. And kind of, like I said, have celebration. So you become family, right? And
Right.
so all of that is confidential, because they certainly don't want church people. God forbid if the church people found out, right? You don't want,
Exactly.
God forbid, where you're supposed to have love for people. So, what is this Christianity thing that we're doing, Tosh? What is this, right?
You
And
know,
when I'm broke, if I'm broken, if I can't come to the church, where can
where
I
are you gonna
go?
go?
Where are you
Yep,
gonna go? And
that's
we
right.
call ourselves ministers of the gospels or brothers and sisters in the gospel, right?
Mhm.
Anyway,
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. I'm sorry.
study,
My
baby. That's my study.
no, it's a great study. I'm sorry. My charger is failing me, so it's stalling me. So I was just trying to because can you hear me okay?
Oh, I hear you. Great. You're just doing a Chinese interpretation with your lips, moving on.
Sorry,
Otherwise,
sorry.
it's good.
I'm with the veg.
Anyway.
Like, what if I'll create my own country, right? Or even in some cases, our own
Yeah,
church.
and listen, with this type of project, because other people want to do it, you can modify it any way you want, right? The main purpose is to offer emotional and financial support to people when they're in the toughest times and show Jesus Christ, right?
Yeah,
We can do that, win the person through love, right? And if any of our if they should still have the abortion, we're still going to stay with the mother. She is a living, viable soul, right? That we want to continue to encourage and love up on that person.
right. Absolutely. I feel like that's what true Christianity looks like. Even as a child, when I would see images of picketers outside of like abortion clinics, like, this thing they were yelling and this condemnation that was,
Mhm.
I would always say to myself, like, what would make me, I mean, okay, great. It does incite fear, right? It does
Mhm.
incite fear. I have to give them that. But there's nothing loving about that approach. And I
Mm-mm.
don't, I
Mm-mm.
don't know why we feel like loving someone loving someone is never the wrong thing to do. And that goes based on anything that the person is doing, has done, whether you agree with it or not. Love always wins. So I don't know
Always. Yeah.
why we lead with the condemnation, particularly with this issue. We feel like we have to be so adamant about guilting people out of the decision that we don't leave space for love, and that's what I
Right.
feel like this program creates an atmosphere of love, regardless of
Yeah.
what
Mhm.
choice. Is telling them, is treating them how God would in terms of I love you in spite of. And I'm
Yeah.
going to be there to pick you up. I'm going to be there. And what is a greater model of God's love than and then being able to share that? And the thing is, by doing that, it's not saying that you're encouraging them to. I mean, obviously, you said it pretty clearly. You do. The ultimate goal is for them to choose to keep the child,
Mhm.
knowing that they have support, knowing that they have. But in the event that they don't, that doesn't
Mhm.
mean that you discard them. And I think to me that is the
Right.
biggest
And
takeaway.
And Tosh, everybody has a story in their mind. And I know everybody up here with us on this podcast, you know somebody who got pregnant in church
Yeah.
and you know what happened to them, right? You know. I know people who said, I will never come back to this church
Hmm.
because we know punishment real good,
Yeah.
but we don't know grace and mercy so well.
Woo.
Where is God's grace, right? When
Hmm.
we err, where is the grace?
Yeah.
So when you can create a grace program, that's
Yeah.
the name. Her name is Grace. It's going to be
Yeah.
on the
It's
building.
at my
Her
church.
name
You can
is
say that.
Grace, right? What if they can see grace? Do you know how transformative that is to a person when
Yeah.
you are broken and people love you in spite of any decisions you have made, any errors you have made, and that God receives you, right? When we I mean, it
Unconditional
brings you
love.
to repentance, right?
Yes.
To know, just like love wins every time. You
Yes.
know a God loves you even when you err. He says, honey, just come back to me. I'm gonna love your baby. Come on back. He's the giver of life. He
Yeah.
gave, he gave you the baby, right?
Yeah,
He said,
exactly.
and how many great people have come from women pregnant out of wedlock? Great people who have been born and done and have done amazing things, right?
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
that my friend Pat, because God is I mean, he sees our future, right? He plans it. And I think he tries to teach us compassion, right? To say, like that story, hey, I can judge you until something happens to me.
Right. And that's what yep.
When it
We
happens to
we want
me,
grace all day
man, I
long, but
want
we don't
grace,
want to
right?
extend it
Well,
to
what about
anyone.
when my neighbor needed grace, right? I don't care about that, right?
Right.
It's I need grace, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. I think that should
that's
be our prayer this evening. Lord, help us to extend more grace to individuals, knowing that we ourselves are you need it.
yeah,
We need it. So help us to be able to
yeah.
extend it to others.
So I
Definitely
want
love
to
this
end, Tosh.
research.
I want to end with this because the question was condemnation or compassion. What will you do?
Mm.
All right.
Yes, I love that. I love that. I'm sorry, there's a couple of comments, and we've all heard stories of this, of someone who was disfellowshipped because they got
Mhm.
pregnant out of wedlock, and then because of how they felt they were treated or perceived by the church, they left. They left, and they never came back because, as you were saying, I can imagine being in such a vulnerable time, needing support, needing and what you're getting is shame and condemnation and how
Right.
could you and God's not pleased. I mean, that who would want to be in that type of
Mm-hmm,
environment?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I know before you had talked about some of the church, we talked about some churches that refuse to have baby showers if the child was,
Yes.
out of what. I mean, so it's like
Tosh, no, Tosh. Refuse to bless the
yeah,
baby.
bless the baby.
Or
That's it.
listen, they don't want to bless the baby in the sanctuary. They'll do it in the pastor's office or
Yeah.
or the fellowship hall, the kitchen, anyway, because the baby doesn't deserve to be in the sanctuary. I,
Yeah.
I You look
Yeah.
at Hebrews
Make it
4,
make sense.
he says, "Come unto me," right? Come
Right.
where you can find mercy and grace in your time of need, right? And so I we have made so many mistakes as a
Yeah.
church. You can say Pastor Marlena said it, and I do. Write it down. I'm giving you permission to say
Yep.
we have made so many mistakes, and as a church, we have hurt so many people because we want to push that you were wrong. You were wrong, right? We
Mhm.
want to just bang them with the error, and then Jesus comes and does differently. That's
Right.
why he said, if you have a stone, you who haven't seen, you throw the first stone,
Right.
right?
Right.
She's never,
Stones.
he knew she was wrong.
Exactly.
Knew was wrong too, but he went around, right? He knew she was wrong, but then he sets her free without condemnation. Do you know what that did for her?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
We'll come
So
back.
if we could do this for other people, man, the kingdom of God.
Even
Woo!
just hearing you say that, it's just he already modeled for us how we should act, but I don't understand why we just don't get it. Like we don't do it. We don't follow his example. Um,
Yes, yes. Thank you everyone for your congratulatory statements. I so appreciate
yeah.
it.
Yeah, this is great research, and I got shared with Keenan about churches wanting this. I know some churches, I know some ministries, whether it's women's ministries or any other ministry. Maybe we need to start a compassion ministry. I don't know,
Absolutely. And
but
us pastors teach it, right?
yeah,
Teach compassion, teach grace, because we need to know more about grace. We're always talking about law and what they've done wrong and how they sinned against God. We know that's true. What are you going to do on the other hand of that? How are
right,
you going to win the soul back, right?
hmm
Love, compassion, and grace.
right. I love it. I love it. Well, once again, thank you for sharing. And don't forget to share this with someone. A lot of us are involved in our churches, a lot of us are on our church boards, and we have opportunities to challenge our leadership in certain areas. And when I say challenge, I mean offer suggestions of different ministries or ways that we can support our members and community. This may be one that you want to share with your leaders. I definitely think it has great value. And Dr. Debrough is going to let us know when it's ready to kind of be duplicated and give us a
Yeah,
little for that.
I
So
will teach anyone. Yes.
Yes, yes, it was indeed a great presentation. All right, guys, thanks for joining us. I don't know if you're watching the red carpet, Emmys right now, but or who won the game? Did someone tell? Did the game is the game over? Who knows? We're in upset land. We don't know what's going out there in the rest of the world.
We're 2 out of 6 as the rest of them
Exactly.
game or something.
But no, thank you all for
Thank you
being
guys
here.
for listening. Appreciate
Yes,
you.
we love you being here with us and joining in the conversation as always. And we'll be back here next week, same time, same place. Have a great week, and remember,
Bye, guys.
show grace where you can. All right, bye bye. All right.
All right, darling. Thank you. Thank you.